Good afternoon. Thank you all to all at the Botstiber Institute for the opportunity to be here today. I appreciate being with you all. As Dr. Power said, we have the coveted post-lunch coma-inducing time slot. So I'm going to start with a quick pop quiz. Who do you think said this? What do you think the person's position is, and what agency do you think he was with? When I first heard about injecting wild horses with immunocontraception, I thought it was the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
President Trump.
Little late. It wasn't me. Do you think it was anybody in this room? So we're going to circle back to that a little bit later on. Both the Sanctuary and Mount Taylor Mustangs are interested in all science-based and humane options for wild horses. However, today, our primary interest is in on-range fertility control. So we are, like a lot of us in this room today, interested in seeing science jump out of the lab and off the page and onto the range to inform management efforts. We're interested in engaging in continuous research and development for adaptation, innovation, and evolution of treatment methods. To us, it's all R&D, success and failure. As long as we learn from it, it can help us move forward. We like to take an immediate, midterm, and long-term approach to management. We're interested in collaborating and partnering with partners that can bring skill sets to the table that move the work forward. And at the bottom line, at the end of the day, we're all about working for healthy wild horses and healthy range. In the late 2000s, several organizations approached the Carson National Forest about using PZP. In 2008, Mount Taylor Mustangs and Sky Mountain Wild Horse Sanctuary proposed to the forest that we would pay for PZP treatment and we would implement it on the range. So in March of 2009, the first Forest Service managed horses were treated with native PZP by hand injection in the chute. Truthfully, it was not the smartest way to go. The horses had just been removed from the range. They were pretty wild. We did not have the kind of chute system that we saw in Dr. Baker's and Dr. Power's presentations. We had to get really right up on those horses to hand inject them, and they were bucking around quite a bit. We believe we got full doses into all of the mares, but I can tell you I remember standing next to the chute with an empty syringe in my hand and the needle still in the mare's butt because she bucked so hard it separated and came apart. So we learned our lesson, and 2 weeks later we administered the booster with a jab stick. It was a slightly smarter way to go in that we didn't have to get so close to the horses. They were a little calmer. However, we had pulled the horses off, and they, of course, had to be held to give the booster, and we were looking for something that was more time and cost-effective than that method. So this is a short video of the next iteration of treatment that we actually implemented on the range in the fall of 2009. Honestly, these are basic methods. A lot of us in this room have used them before. It's jab stick, remote darting, and a blowgun. But it just shows you how we were trying to move the work forward really quickly toward on-range treatment.
Yep.
Woohoo, number one! You got her. You got her.
Yep.
She was pretty calm after being darted. So this is the next iteration for on-range treatment managed that we tried out on the Carson. It's the Mount Taylor Mustang's remote control dart gun, or the RoboGun, as we like to call it. So Dan invented the RoboGun in 2010, and we each used it to treat mares on the Jicarilla Wild Horse Territory in 2011 and 2012. We were in a blind, some distance away, the monitoring band activity with night vision as needed and remote control video. The bands would come into the gun, encircled the base of the gun, and we could use the pan tilt and laser sighting and night vision features to get clean shots. So we recovered all of the darts. They all had fired completely. We don't have efficacy data per se. I can tell you we did dart Dan accidentally when we were in the research and development phase in the workshop, and he did not have any foals. This next video is trap, treat, and release on Haditha Mesa in the Carson National Forest. This is a very interesting herd to work with. They're very elusive and wary. The road access into the territory is rough. It's heavily treed, so it's a great place to experiment with on-range management. It's not Cedar Mountains by any sense of the imagination. However, one of the things is if you can get it done on Haditha Mesa, you can get it done almost anywhere. So what you're going to see is the remote control gate closure system that Mount Taylor Mustangs uses night and day. We wait until the entire band is in the trap, the remote gate closes, and then you'll see the PZP treatment.
I think there's 10 or 11 in there. Here we go again. This is the PZP. Make sure I get every little drop. And when this dart goes off, it pushes a pellet into the horse, and I have a little hole here on the side that squirts the PZP into the mare. We're gonna dart this blaze face bay run mare here. Go down a little.
So Alan touched on these research results this morning. These are the results from that darting that you just saw. Year one was a 79% reduction in reproduction. Year two was a 35% reduction in reproduction. So it was the first demonstration of 2 years of measurable infertility in herds that had been remote darted with PZP-22 in place of being hand injected. It's a strategy for treating hard to access herds on the range, and key is that it's a one-shot protocol. So you don't have to worry about boosting them later that year or the next year. So we are most interested in adapting different treatment methods to herd behavior and to access. The Mount Taylor Mustangs trap, treat, release method that you saw allows for bands to be treated and released very quickly back into the territory. The horses that you saw darted in this video were caught somewhere around midnight. They were darted about 8 o'clock in the morning, and they were back out of the corral at about 8:30. This is really key, we found, because bands will return to the trap given the bait that we use, which is a big draw, and if they're released quickly, we found that they will return to the trap in the future for retreatment. We also spent a lot of time out in the territories getting to know the herds, and Kayla touched on the importance of this today, trying to understand band structure, band membership, travel patterns, where they are day and night, that sort of thing, all so that we can treat as many horses as possible. And it's been said that we let go the pretty horses when we had simultaneous gather and treat happening on the Carson, and we did. And we did that because we were using horses with a lot of color as marker horses for marker bands. It's a way to quickly identify PZP-treated bands for future retreatment. And at the time, the Carson wasn't as far over AML as they are today. So that was sort of one of those mid to longer term strategies that we were using to keep stable PZP bands that were not reproducing out on the range to stabilize herd numbers overall. So we are really interested in seeing how science and on-range experience with horses with multiple treatment methods can be used to maximize scale and efficacy. And I can tell you, whatever any of us in here thinks about partnerships, partners can save us money. They also can help with evaluating research results. Sky Mountain Wild Horse Sanctuary paid for the first several years of PZP treatment on the Carson National Forest, and we continue to invest in PZP treatment today with the forest. The Humane Society of the United States covered all of the direct PZP project-related costs for the trap, treat, and release project that you saw in Haditha, Mesa. And collaboration with Dr. Rutberg and vet students produced the research on effectiveness for the Haditha Mesa trap, treat project. Partnerships also can offer other opportunities for different kinds of savings. Partnerships allow us to diversify funding and keep it consistent over time. For those of us who work with federal funds, we've seen projects derailed when there's no money for the project in next year's budget, and partners can bring those kinds of resources to the table in an ongoing way. We also came up with a lot of new strategies for on-range treatment by debating with our Carson colleagues and others about how we were going to access those horses and how we could best treat them. And we also tend to have more flexibility than agency personnel. We spend a lot of time on the range. We're not on a salary. We can go out on nights and weekends and stay out on the range. So those are just some of the kinds of benefits that a collaboration with multiple different organizations can bring to the table. Partnerships also provide opportunities for all of us to look at what we bring to the table and how we lead. I can say that sometimes this is a little excruciating given the controversies in our field, and yet they're all opportunities for growth. A number of us know firsthand that leading for a true balance of interests on the range and for a greater public good is deeply challenging. I've learned a lot from our colleagues at the Carson about multi-use in theory versus multi-use in practice, and it's been eye-opening to try to work around and across broad interests and find that common ground. It took incredibly strong leadership on the Carson National Forest's part to implement PZP in 2009, and we're very lucky that we have continued leadership support for immunocontraception today. In 2009, there were a lot of tensions on Haditha Mesa. There was a lot of pressure on the land because of drought, and there were not a lot of internal Forest Service policies or processes set up for immunocontraception. However, there was a recognition that Roundup and removal alone wasn't working. And so the leadership took a huge risk, and they were willing to tolerate the ambiguity that comes with a new approach, and one that frankly has less tangible results. Counting foals not born is a lot less tangible than counting horses removed. The leadership was also really strategic in that they were willing to focus on both short and long-term goals and willing to look at all factors that were affecting the range at that time. So we're going to circle back to this. This is former Carson National Forest District Ranger and Wild Horse Coordinator Anthony Madrid. And this is what he would say if he were here in this room with us today. And I checked this out with him, and it's really true. I'd much rather put a dart in a horse's butt any day than have to run up that horse, do compliance, and adopt it out. We are indebted to incredible partners on the Carson and in many places. Diana Trujillo and Anthony Madrid, Kayla Grams, Kat Carey and Alexa Ortiz, Alan Rutberg and John Turner, Sylvia Johnson, the Humane Society of the United States, the entire Carson Forest team we have today, and those who have left us, Dr. Jay Kirkpatrick and Dan Elkins. Thank you.